I'm MJ Leslie, Chief Growth Officer at LifeRaft.
How would you characterize Canada's overall entrepreneurship ecosystem? Perhaps you could share a few strengths and weaknesses and what you think we could do, or at least clues towards it.
I think I would characterize the Canadian ecosystem as strong, vibrant, and diverse. I would also say that we typically fly a little bit under the radar. And what I mean by that is I don't think that there's maybe as much building of brands or general brand awareness around a lot of the startups or the startup communities that Canada has, especially when you compare it to our neighbors in the US. I think that they are very boastful in kind of how they promote their startup, both the philosophy and the community, but individual organizations as well, where I find in Canada and at least in Atlantic Canada especially, we're a little bit quieter about our accomplishments and kind of what we're doing. And it's very much a kind of head down and grind working environment where I think we could probably do a much better job of promoting some of the accomplishments that a lot of our startups or our small and medium business have kind of accomplished and some of the work that we're doing in Canada. There's a Canadian government program called the Canadian Technology Accelerator, and it basically puts you into some of these really centralized and large, fast-paced cities in the US to help build your business and do some go-to-market planning. And it was there that I kind of realized how quiet some of the entrepreneurs in Canada are about how we do things and the accomplishments that we have. So I think having a bit more of a pedestal and being very confident about telling people exactly what we're doing and also exactly what we want from them. So what do we need out of organizations that we're meeting with or government programs that we're participating in?
So you are obviously a chief growth officer. And so I'm wondering what kind of skills you think are required for entrepreneurs to grow a company from idea generation to scale up, which we know is often where the most difficulty exists.
So I think, and this isn't unique to Canadian entrepreneurs, I would say, things like persistence and commitment are attributes that are almost required from an entrepreneur because it is not an easy road and does require a lot of hard work. Or attributes that I don't think are as commonly advertised that I've found are even critical to the success would be things like self-awareness and adaptability. Our self-awareness, our humility almost in certain situations really lends to the stability of a lot of our entrepreneur kind of goals and communities, just because you need to understand what your strengths are, but more importantly, you have to understand what your weaknesses are and where the gaps are so that you can fill those. And then separately to that, I think adaptability is critical. If 2020 taught us anything, is that we never know what's coming and you might need to pivot your business brand or the application of what your organization is doing very quickly. So just having that flexibility kind of in your back pocket and knowing that it doesn't need to take a crisis to utilize some of that flexibility and adapt to circumstances is a huge benefit.
So if we look specifically at the key stakeholders of an ecosystem, government, investors, corporate, Canada, academia, and any other that you think of, what do you want to see each of those do to help SMEs, with its key challenges around accessing capital, mentorship, any other support programs or incentives they need to grow and scale up?
For government, and I personally have been very fortunate, and my experience at LifeRaft is, we've also done a lot of engagement with government programs. The easiest and most straightforward feedback I could give is there is excellent programming out there. I think the process could probably be streamlined a little bit. Many entrepreneurs don't know the kind of communication and marketing behind some of the government programs isn't strong enough, or it's not being directed to where maybe some of these entrepreneurs would know to look. So there's one part of that on process. And then just kind of coordinating. We're very fortunate that the federal government has very solid programs in place, especially as it relates to exporting and kind of discovering new markets for startup companies. However, the Atlantic provinces and each individual province has their own programs, which I think if there was a little bit more collaboration between the provincial government and the federal government, some of these programs that are either redundant or could be utilized side by side would be a lot more impactful when entrepreneurs and organizations can utilize either both or know what programs are available from each entity to know which ones to actually engage on. For companies that are trying to scale, it's the mentorship or the maybe direction and advice that I think could be even stronger. So when that organization does take on investment, having some tactical advice on what to do in certain scenarios. So giving kind of knowledge sharing on both the strategic goals of the organization, but then actually how to accomplish those and how to put that money to the best use is maybe not, we could probably improve a little bit on that just from a communication standpoint, and also just in the mentoring of organizations with their investment companies. And obviously I'm partial because we are very fortunate to have CBGF as our partner in that. And really, aside from the monetary investment, the mentorship and the communication and even just having some brainstorming opportunities with them has been hugely valuable. In Canada, I do find there's a gap. I don't think that there's a strong kind of private sector community that has been engaged or even formalized. A great example of somebody that's done this really well, there's a program out of Atlanta, Georgia, called the Atlantic Bridge Community, which is basically a coalition of private sector companies, and they're very large brands in certain examples. So Coca-Cola, I think, is one of their flagship brands. They actually have designed that community to engage over a dozen of these private sector companies, but then up to, I think it's 50 different entrepreneur startup companies. And they give them the space and the opportunity to collaborate on kind of almost a workshop basis to help those entrepreneurs bring their product or service to market. But in the process, they're getting very valuable, expertise and feedback from private organizations. But at the end of those, the kind of added benefit is those private sector companies are often looking for the solutions that a lot of the entrepreneurs are developing. So that, throughout that process, not only are they understanding and gaining knowledge from that experience, but they're also, gaining a potential customer at the end of it. A lot of universities have excellent programs and opportunities for collaboration between students and startup organizations. They're just not very well known, especially for some of those small businesses. Having better advertising potentially from some of those academic communities to the startup community on what they're looking for and how there might be some partnerships that can emerge from that, not even just from a cooperative standpoint. There's a lot of post-secondary education in Atlantic Canada that actually focuses on project-based engagement. So they'll look for students to do a communications plan, for example, for a startup company or an organization that might not have a full communications department. In that scenario, both of those entities really win. So I think streamlining those processes and maybe even marrying them up a little closer to the provincial and federal government programs would be hugely beneficial.
If you have 30 seconds to pitch to someone in a position of power in Canada, who would you choose to pitch, and what would you say in less than 30 seconds to try to strengthen and improve Canada's entrepreneurship ecosystem?
I'd love to have representatives from the investment community and also like private organization, so the private sector in the same room, so that I could pitch to them the importance of, from my standpoint, from the startup community, the importance for them to work together, but also to provide more than a customer or more. I don't want to just pitch them as an end customer, or from the investment side, I don't want to pitch you just for investment. I would love to have the kind of collaboration between those two markets and organizations like mine or the startup community for both mentorship, but just direction. How, what's the best way to do a go-to-market plan from an investments perspective, but also from the private sector's perspective, so that we can reduce kind of the time to market and really hone in on the go-to-market fit and our messaging for those organizations.